right, in the last video I posted the requirements, which were 5 or more line art layers, jumbled and modified and put into my own composition, right? On any theme I choose, I chose Mayan line art. Now, if I want to follow some of the directions here for a bonus finishing extra, now that I've posted it as black line art, I can go back into my PSD file, which is saved in my folder, and I open it up in Photopea or Photoshop, and now I can play with compositing in color, right? Just like in the assignment directions, it gives you the examples of Arturo Herrera, who used Disney coloring books of the 7 dwarves, right, to make these compositions. And then in my favorite examples of his work, like this one, I'll just show it a little bit bigger here. He cut it out, made it in just the line art of the, like kind of taped it together, cut it out. It was just black lines. And then he cut it out of colored felt. I think it was felt that he tie-dyed. So it had all these bright kind of swirls of color. So he completely replaced the shape of the lines with new color to make his own piece. So we're going to do that same thing. Here it's just replaced with red. Here it's replaced with blue. So how can we add color? We go to, we're not going to create our own colors. We're going to use other people's pixels. So I'm going to go to Google Images for this. And let's look for a comic book illustration of the Mayan people. Right? So I look up Mayan comic book illustration just to get something with a lot of variety. And then I want to use tools to make it large, right? Get as many pixels as possible. This one's pretty interesting. So I'm right-clicking this one of Galactus. And the reason Galactus is here is Galactus was designed by Jack Kirby. And Jack Kirby really liked indigenous American artworks and blended those influences into his character designs. I'm going to save those into my project folder or onto my desktop. These are both over 1,000 pixels in at least one dimension. And then this one is more particularly, based on the Mayan art forms and coloring. So I can take 3 different ones. And then just like I did with the black line art, because compositing with colored pixels is no different than compositing with black pixels, I'm going to drag them in. And I'm going to stretch them to cover my canvas. They're going to come in as smart objects, but I'm going to stretch them just to cover my canvas. I can warp them, right? I'm going to get rid of that text because that's going to be distracting. Kind of push and pull them off. And then last one, good old Jack the King Kirby, a hero to all narrative illustrators in America. Visual designer of most of our favorite comic book characters. Now let's warp it a little bit. Because classic American illustrators have been exploited and used enough without infringing on their copyrights further. All right, so now I'm going to play with opacity. They're still smart objects, right? I don't need to rasterize them to do this, but I can blend them together using opacity. And I can blend them together using layer styles. Something I love about Photoshop that I wish they could do with the memory of Photopea is that it will preview the layer style just as soon as you hover over it. But in Photopea, you actually have to select it to see what it would look like. So that's pretty cool. There we go. That's kind of cool. Up that opacity. Let's try vivid light. There we go. And then this last one, up its opacity. You can change its colors. It's a little much. Take that opacity down. Okay, so let's have colors like this. Okay, now what I've basically done is like tie-dyed my own piece of felt. And now I'm going to merge all three of those together, going to layer, merge layers to make my own, color fabric. It will do it. There we go. And it wasn't exactly what it looked like, and that's because I used a difference filter, but it will work. Okay, so now I am going to select in my merged layer all of the empty space pixels with my magic wand and contiguous turned off. And then I am going to swap that selection. So right now it's selecting the empty space. If I say select inverse, it will select all of the inside space. This is just to get the cleanest possible image. It's like a cookie cutter. Then I'm going to move that selection to my fabric or my color, and then I'm going to hit Command J, which is like a one-stop copy paste. That's going to cut out the image and put it on a new layer on top. So it cuts out my black line art image out of that color. Yes. And then if I want to be extra fancy, I can double click on that colored layer and add like a drop shadow or other kind of effects. Right? And then I can sell it on my shop as authentic white German Mayan art. I don't know. So I'm going to now save this first as a PNG without the white background. So I'm going to say export as PNG, but I'm going to change the name slightly by adding color at the end. Otherwise, it will overwrite my black and white PNG. So that will go into downloads, and then when I move it in here, now I have two PNGs, right? I have a black and white one and I have a color one. I can also save it as a JPEG, export as a JPEG, but make sure I change the name by adding color to the end. This is optional, but it's a lot of fun. Then I move it from downloads into my folder, because file organization is important. And then lastly, I need to save it, just save it, so that my PSD file also has those color layer options. So I can play with it later. And I mark that as green. And then I can go into the assignment that I've posted, and I can edit it. So you go to your post, you've already turned it in, but you can click on the three little dots, edit, and you can add a resubmission or a new variation, or really anything you like. And this time I'll do it with the PNG, which is going to look the same as the JPEG because the background of Canvas is white. But remember, a PNG shows it without a background, right? Free floating. And you can see that drop shadow behind it. Then I'm going to shrink it to fit. And then say done. And now I've got my jumbles. All right, that's it.